Hello everyone, my name is Stonesy Boy, and this will be a short video, but a good one. Probably a 15-minute video. I'm gonna stop talking and let's start. Where? Said Raj. Over here. Where's here? Here, guys, said Isaac, and this time, hold on. What? They said in unison. Where are we gonna go after this? Oscar understood at some primal level why Isaac sounded so defeated. With no light anywhere to be found, all they could do was run. So what? We just hang out and get ground up into a hamburger, said Raj, resuming jumping. Oscar's terror reached a new level when Isaac didn't have an answer. And to think, less than an hour ago, the most vexing question had been which end of the train tracks to start the trick-or-treating on. The train! Yelled Oscar, and just as he did, he heard Raj's hand connect with the wooden knob and string attached to the garage emergency release. The knob slapped the metal of the garage door. Raj jumped again, and again. He sent the knob swinging. There it is, you guys, Isaac yelled, urgency finding him once more, and then watched wide-eyed as the doorknob and the door began to wobble. He's almost, said Isaac. I'm almost, said Raj. Isaac's voice laughing from the other side of the door. This is it. I'm putting you out of your misery in 3, 2, and you're dead. That's it. I'm putting you out of your misery in 3, 2, and you're dead. Raj's fingertips caught the wooden knob. This time he yanked hard on the string, releasing the automatic arm, holding the garage door in place. Get on that side, said Oscar. Then Isaac grabbed the ridge of the garage door on one end, while Raj took the middle and Oscar took the left. They flung the garage door up with enough force to make it hit the top of the track and come crashing back down. Just as it did, the handle of the door leading to the garage dropped to the concrete floor. The door swung wide to reveal the plush trap chaser, set on its mindless destruction. The boys threw the garage door open with the same amount of force, only this time they ducked underneath before it came crashing down again, pointing them in a driveway and the rabbit in the garage. It slammed into the door, digging its teeth across the metal. They winced under the sound. This isn't going to hold it for long, said Raj, and while the Oscar from yesterday might have doubted that even functioning clutch trap could cut through metal, the Oscar of tonight had the very reason to believe it. It wouldn't stop until it had a reason to. The train, he said again. Then took off running, taking it on Faith and other two who followed him. They'd barely reached the end of Oscar's block before they heard the squeal of twisted metal and knew their borrowed time had expired. They hurtled over their bikes left abandoned in people's yards, and electrical transformer boxes swatting away dead leaves and trash and swallowed air and assaulted them. All the soundtrack of a steadily moving mechanical rabbit, its jaw open and slamming shut in increasing speed, its chasing legs. Oscar dared to look behind only once, finding the plush trap closer than he feared it might be. Close enough to see its gloating whites of its vacant eyes. As the rabbit gained speed, Oscar and his friends lost theirs. The train tracks were still a quarter of a mile away. Do I even want to know how close it is? Raj asked, his breath breathing quickly, transitioning into wheezing. Just keep going, said Oscar. Whatever you do, don't slow down. Oscar's leg burned as he pumped his arms. But even Isaac was starting to peter out. They just needed to make it a little further. How? Isaac panted, swallowing before trying again. How do you even know there will be a train? Isaac had guessed the plan. Oscar didn't have time to explain. I don't, said Oscar, and Isaac would say a word after that. He understood. If there wasn't a train, then there wasn't any hope. Dipping into the clearest path that they could find in the wooded land leading to the train tracks, Oscar, Isaac, and Raj raised their hands over their heads, shielding their faces from low-hanging branches as they listened to the plush trap crash the path through the trees, making quick work of any branches that dared to get in his way. When the path began to incline, Oscar knew they were getting close. His lungs were on fire, and Raj beginning to cough and sputter in pain. They crested a hill. Oscar saw the most glorious of all sights, light. I told you, Isaac panted. They never lose power. But as they tumbled down the slope leading toward the tracks, they once again lost sight of the east side of town, and the dreadful realization struck Oscar and without a train to intervene, they'd never make it to the east side in all of its lighted glory. The sound was faint at first, nearly impossible to hear over a howl of a storm and the buzzsaw of a plush trap gaining on them. But when Raj and Isaac looked in the same direction, Oscar thought he heard it. He knew that wasn't just a phantom noise. "The train horn! It's coming! It's coming!" yelled Isaac. They yelled a collective whoop, filled in their relief at hearing their savior approach. But they couldn't see it yet, and when they turned around, they froze to see Oscar's blood in his veins. The shadow of the rabbit loomed tall across their feet before the bunny ascended the top of the hill. "It's not going to come in time," whispered Isaac. "It'll come in time," said Oscar. The plush trap tipped forward at the hill's peak and launched, sprinting down the hill with expert, deadly precision. "We're gonna die! This is it! We're gonna die!" said Raj. "It'll come in time," said Oscar, never taking his eye off the rabbit. It was halfway down the hill before Oscar heard the beautiful sound of the train's horn cutting through the whir of the storm. The rabbit's eyes bulged, its ears struck straight into the air at an unnatural angle, and as it pounded down the second half of the hill, Oscar could even see shards of mangled metal in the garage door sticking from his jagged teeth like chicken bones. Oscar dared to take his eyes from the plush trap just long enough to catch sight of the small circle of the light at visible end of the track. "Go," Oscar said to them. "No way, man," said Raj. "All of us together." "Just trust me," said Oscar. "Are you nuts?" said Isaac. "Get across the tracks," Oscar said, a strange calm washing over his body as he reassured the distance in each periphery of his vision, the oncoming plush trap and the oncoming train. His brain was going to do calculus he didn't even know it was capable of. The horn blared through the air. The train was mere seconds away. So was the plush trap. "Guys, it's going to work. This time it's all going to work out. Just go." Raj and Isaac took one more look at the oncoming train before diving over the tracks and tumbling into the other side. Oscar could hear them screaming for him to cross. He could hear them, but he wasn't listening. All he could focus on at that moment, in the split second between possible life and certain death, was the crackling, stubborn, live voice of Mr. Derevix. Sometimes you have to know when to go for it and when it doesn't look possible." And in that impossibly far and infinitely huge space of time, Oscar finally understood what the old man meant. Sometimes luck isn't found, sometimes luck is made, and when it is, you know when to grab hold of it. To the chorus of his friends' screams and blaring of the train's horn and the grinding of the rabbit's teeth, he took 3 giant steps straight toward the train, stepped onto the tracks, and waited for just the right seconds for the plush trap chaser to race onto the tracks and turn the face of Oscar, right beam of the train lights. Oscar had a split second to register the sinister eyes. From its nervous, bloody mouth came the voice of Oscar's mom. "Little man, I need you." Then Oscar jumped. The air surrounding him smelled of steel and fire. At first, he didn't know what to make of the light. Was he in a hospital? Was he trapped under the train? "Did I die?" He heard a voice in his ears, and it seemed detached from his body. "Honestly, I don't know how, but no," said Raj, gulping at the air from the east side of the tracks, his body trembling hard enough for Oscar to feel the ground shaking under him. Maybe that was just a train. He could still hear the blare of the horn in the distance. Oscar looked at Isaac, whose hands were on his knees as he closed his eyes and shook his head slowly. "You're an idiot," he said. "I know," said Oscar. "Hold on." It's nice and dark now. At once the ground stopped vibrating and their legs stopped wobbling. They crept over to the part of the track where Oscar played the most dangerous game of chicken. There, twisted and flattened into concrete ties, hardened soil underneath, lay the remains of one plush trap chaser, a light activated chomping a green rabbit, and no longer Oscar's favorite character from the FNAF Fazbear world. Dark green fur floated in the clouds around the smashed rabbit, while other clumps stuck in the grease and the rail ties. Tiny jagged pieces of teeth shone under the newly uncovered moon. The clouds finally parting after it already too late to help. Bits of bloody human gum were attached to the teeth. Oscar swallowed down bile and shifted his gaze. Oscar stared down the single grotesque eye that remained semi-intact, half buried but still bulging from the packed earth under the track. The other eye was smashed tissue, dead. But looking more human than ever. He shivered and turned to walk away. He was unable to stand looking at such the unblinking killer. The next night, Oscar helped deliver candy to the residents of Royal Oaks Nursing Home, while his mom lit fires under the orderlies and rolled their eyes at the newest, dumbest ones. Sort of reverse trick-or-treating with the candy coming to the people since they were coming to the candy. When Oscar arrived at Mr. Durvix's room, Marilyn was curled at the foot of his bed. "Someone's feeling bold," Oscar said to her. But Mr. Durvix was one who answered. "I've decided that if she is going to steal my soul, she's earned the right," he said. And while it made 0 sense to Oscar, it seemed to make enough sense to Mr. Durvix. He no longer lied on the loyal cat with suspicion. "So, how's the harvest go?" he asked. And again, Oscar, lucid. "So, how did the harvest go?" Found himself in the company of one Mr. Durvix's lucid moments. More than lucid, even. It's like he'd been standing right there on the train tracks with Oscar when he needed it the most. "A bad crop this year," he said, and Mr. Durvix nodded slowly, as though he'd been there before. Oscar tried and failed to imagine Mr. Durvix and his own 3-foot small chomping rabbit. Tall chomping rabbit. "But I'm glad I did the digging," said Oscar, and with that, Mr. Durvix was satisfied enough to fall back asleep, Marilyn greedily needing the space between his splayed feet. In the break room, Oscar found his mother, whom he hadn't spoken since the morning, and only explanation that the toy had gone and a little bit of damage to the doors, and he spent the next weekend patching them, and probably the rest of his natural life saving for a new garage door. His mom hardly seemed to notice, though. He supposed their fight over the phone earlier and that night had left more of a gaping hole in her than anything the plush trap could have done. Because he felt awful about it. He did something that he knew wouldn't make up for it. He knew he'd have to try to, so he took what remained of his money and stopped into the house Halloween hallway, picked up the small plastic jack-o'-lantern and 2 bags of chocolate-covered almonds she loved so much. He filled the pumpkin with chocolates and stashed it in the cabinet in the break room until he knew she'd been taking her first coffee of the night. Handed it to her, she smiled, and he thought she hadn't looked sad since Dad died. Still, she pulled him to the tightest rib-cracking hug in recent memory, even though he could barely breathe under her fierce grip. He was so happy to know that he didn't completely destroy her. "I never meant to depend on you so much," she whispered while she held him, and Oscar was surprised. He thought his dad was the reason of her sadness, but he never considered she might be the reason. "That's okay," and he surprised himself by meaning it. It really was okay. Not all the time, but he thought maybe that good times better. Like when his mom liked the present he made for her, or when his friends put their actual lives on the line so he could face the monster alone. "It's okay," he said, and let her hug him for one good long while. Welp, that is the end of Five Nights at Freddy's Fazbear's Fright's Fetch. I mean, really, what do you want me to say? It was a good book. So now we can finally cross this one. And yeah, this is genuinely the end of this book. Now, before we end this video off, the next book we are reading is 1:35 a.m., which looks pretty good. So, you know. And, yeah. Before we go, one more thing before we go. I'm going to turn off my reading lamp that I have situated here. Go back here and turn on this lamp. And I'm going to put 3 feet on this thing. Find a tape measure and put 3 feet. So he was that big. 3 feet tall. Yeah, that'd be pretty scary to fight. He's basically the size of my entire leg. So, yeah. I hope you guys have a super fantastic, wonderful day. Be polite, be efficient. I love reading the books for you guys. and happy spooky month. Ba ba da ba 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 da ba.